Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box, Online Radio. Welcome to the first ever edition of Occult Fridays here on Black Box Radio. We are going to be doing 2 days a week devoted to things associated with the occult, and the first one is going to be Occult Mondays, and I decided Occult Fridays will be the second day. You can start and end your week about discussing things associated with occult, evil, spirits, rituals. We're going to get into all of that stuff. Today we're going to be talking about the work of Dr. Michael Shermer and his specific book and the interviews he's given on the science of good and evil. Now, I'm going to tell you flat out, I am not the biggest fan of Dr. Michael Shermer. In fact, I don't even really like his work. And someone asked me once, why do you spend so much time reading his stuff and listening to him online if you don't like him? And I was just like, sometimes in life, you need counterbalance. You need to hear things that you don't agree with. Because, you can't just only listen to things that you want to hear. Or at the very least, listen to only things that support your own confirmation bias. Charlie Chaplin gave a very famous speech in the film The Great Dictator, when he said the famous line, "We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. Human beings are like that." And that single line is really just what Dr. Michael Shermer expands upon in his work about the science of good and evil. Now, Michael Shermer is someone who doesn't exactly draw that particular movie reference, but that's essentially what he's saying. I'm going to draw particular attention to his interview with AM2 when he's discussed about how the part of the brain that gives people happiness is triggered when you help somebody. It's exactly the way Charlie Chaplin portrayed it out. He's saying, like, the part of the brain that triggers, the part of the brain gets triggered when you help somebody the same way it does, when you're receiving other kinds of happiness in your life. So what Michael Shermer is trying to say is, number one, we are naturally moral, and number two, we are a naturally constructive species. But one of the biggest things, though, that I have to take exception with is, so many people do this, whether it's Michael Shermer or Sam Harris. Sam Harris was more about using science to understand morality. But with Michael Shermer, it's like, happiness is not the end goal. No, sorry. When you're dealing with good and evil, happiness isn't good and sadness is not evil. Because remember, the opposite of happiness is sadness, unhappiness. Is that evil? Well, no. And furthermore, the brain can be triggered by other things. There are many other things that can make a person lead to these happy feelings. So one of the largest things that we really need to understand is just that, first of all, you haven't even explained about why there is a connection between happiness and morality. It's just, yeah, okay, it makes people feel good. And what you're trying to say is it makes people feel good to help other people. So that is something that is good. And we're just this naturally constructive species. But the big thing to note about that is not all people are like that. Not all people have this type of brain chemistry. And I talked about Braulio Castillo on this channel about when we went into narcissism, psychopaths, sociopaths. Okay, not everyone has a brain that is wired in the same way. And this is what a lot of people kind of do in the psychological field, is they try to push everyone toward this one definition of, normal. Like, there's this kind of just like median, perfect brain out there, and they all want us to kind of get as close to that as possible. But, does anything like that actually exist? I'm not really sure. Furthermore, happiness is not the end goal. Happiness and goodness together? No. Happiness has nothing to do with being good. And, Michael Shermer is someone who does not even really acknowledge anything associated with good and evil. He's someone who said that there is no mind, there is only a brain. He doesn't actually think that good and evil exist. He just says that there is brain chemistry. That's all it is. They're just chemicals in your brain that make you feel this certain way. But the problem is he's a horrible cynic, and he's one of the guys that just gets so skeptical that he just says, there's nothing there. That's like his answer for everything. There's nothing there, you know, like when anyone ever criticizes something, the answer is, there's nothing there. So it's like, maybe we can actually put some more thought into this. And one of the big things about this is, though, I mentioned Sean McCraney on the first Occult Mondays, and he brought up another point associated with conflating happiness and good and evil. And it is that if you punch somebody in the face and you, like, just knock them out, you might feel happy doing that. Is that constructive? Is that good? And that was going into the guy he was debating, Christopher Nemelka, you know, like, even got into that whole thing. He said something similar to Dr. Shermer. He's like, sin is the absence of happiness. And he's sort of saying the same thing, that, you know, things that draw you toward true happiness are good, and things that draw you away from that are evil. But one of the big things is, I mean, the whole thing, you know, you do punch somebody in the face and you knock them out, and you would feel good doing that. You can have these feelings for so many reasons, not only from constructive things, not only from helping people, not only from, you know, being someone that of traditionally moral, upstanding character. Those feelings in the brain could come from so many things, so it's just like, what it really sounds like a lot of the things he's doing is, he's just kind of conflating a lot of traditional thought into his kind of own pseudo-definition of good and evil. Partially because, you know, he has an enormous kind of tendency just to say, there's nothing there. Yeah, there's nothing outside of the human brain. It's just like, there's not even a mind. You just have chemicals in your brain, and that's all there is. But what a lot of people are recognizing now in the 21st century is just that maybe there's a little bit more to it. Maybe there's a little bit more to the equation. Now, when it comes to this whole notion of, you know, sin being the absence of happiness, a lot of people in the world are really pushing to the opposite direction. Someone once told me that the message of Buddhism and the teachings of Buddha are all about, well, just that. They're trying to say that the message of Buddhism is to be happy. Buddha is trying to teach people to be happy. And I was like, I don't necessarily think that's true. Because Buddhism is about the removal of desire, right? The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, right? And then Jainism and Hinduism do have similar things. Jainism talks a lot about the elimination of desire. And why do they want to do this? Is it about being happy? No, I don't think so. Is it about even being constructive? Partially. It is about eliminating destruction. It is about just being void. Once you get rid of all the desire in you, you get rid of all the negativity in you, and you're just void, and you don't... It's not about happiness, it's just being about void from everything, like, you know, eliminating all of the destruction within you. And why would they want to do this? Why do Jainism and Hinduism talk about this? Well, it's about putting your mind in touch with the supreme reality. Or, in other terms, you could say putting your mind in touch with the unbreakable aspects of nature and the cosmos. But that's like, that takes a long time to explain all that stuff. That's kind of the nutshell version. So there's this whole notion that it's just about happiness. But in reality, happiness has nothing to do with it. And that's kind of what the guy Sean McCraney was trying to talk about. He's just sort of like, happiness can be caused from a whole bunch of things. There can be a whole bunch of motivations that would lead someone to happiness. The brain chemistry can cause those feelings for a variety of things that are not necessarily constructive. And this whole notion of, you know, helping people makes you feel good. Is that really the case? I mean, does helping people really make you feel good? Hey, help me carry my boxes up the stairs, please. Do you feel good when you do that? Sometimes you feel really bad when you're helping somebody. I used to really think lately that maybe Charlie Chaplin got it wrong. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. Sometimes I just feel like life is like, you know, we want to live by our happiness, not by our misery. You want to live by your own happiness, not by your own misery. But, it's not a very exact thing. But the big thing to remember is, when this whole notion of the science of good and evil, a lot of people are just sort of like, there are just chemicals in your brain that cause you to have these feelings. And, you know, we talked about Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism. Those things try to sort of say that there's a little more to it. And all of those things just, you know, want you to be in touch with something much larger. They want you to be in touch with things that are outside of your own reality, or outside of your own self. Self is an illusion. Reality is not an illusion, but your sense of self is. Once again, long drawn out, complicated things. But what do you think? Do you think that there's anything more than brain chemistry? Furthermore, let's ask that very big question. Is sin the absence of happiness? Secondarily, is that just all there is? Is happiness what draws us to help people? I mean, I think I put forward a few challenges to that whole notion that just because you're helping somebody, that doesn't trigger happiness, you know? And the second thing is, happiness doesn't always equal something constructive. I mean, you can do a destructive action and have those type of feelings, and that just doesn't sound very exact. And it sounds like you're talking about only half the equation once you go into that. What about all the examples of things like that are not constructive? Well, and what do you have to say about that? If anybody has anything to say at all, you can drop a comment below, and you can even hit the like button or subscribe if you like, but most importantly, drop a comment below so we can start discussing things a little bit more. Until next time.